Welcome to Midnight Musings times 2. I'm your host, Soul.
I'm your other host, V.
We should be sleeping, but tonight we're talking about book adaptations. Okay. I feel like there a lot of YA stuff that we talked about, a lot of like middle grade kind of stuff that we talk about, fluffy stuff. Now there's some like older, like new adult, not new adult, but like adult stories and like thrillers, mysteries, that kind of area that has adaptations that I feel like those tend to be the better ones, but the ones that I don't read and the ones that I don't watch. So I'm thinking along the lines of like Gone Girl.
Mm.
Have you read it? Have you watched it?
Read it, didn't watch.
Didn't watch the movie.
Nope.
Okay.
I want to.
Well,
It's on my list. I want to, but
you have to watch it because I've seen the movie and then went back to read the book. And they're both, I think, phenomenal. Really good movie. Really good movie. I was like, mind blown. Oh my goodness. And I had to go back and read the book. But it's not like the typical stories that I would watch or read, but it was amazing adaptation. What was the other one I was thinking about?
Speaking of just like I read it, didn't watch it, another one that I heard was really good is The Room.
Yes, that's what the other one I was thinking about right now. We just talked about it the other day. It was on my tip of my tongue. You watched it but didn't read it?
I read it. I didn't watch it.
Okay.
That one specifically, I was told to read it first and then watch it.
Well, of course, is my case. I watched it first. Did not read it. I don't think I'll ever read the story because it's such a painful story. I don't think I will read it. But yes, I imagine the story is really good too because I've heard really great stuff about the book. And it was like, you know, one of those, everybody was reading it. All the book clubs were talking about it. You saw it everywhere at the bookstore. So I imagine the book must be good. But the movie was amazing.
You have a ghost.
I don't know what that was.
You have something a ghost.
Please don't say that. I don't know. I'm moving soon, so there's a bunch of stuff just like teetering on the edges of tables and countertops because I'm packing and unpacking everything. Room, yes. You think it's a good read?
Okay, so reading it, the story, yeah, it's it's sad. It's a hard story to like, kind of get through. My only thing was it's the way it's written is a little hard for me to read. It's not the kind that I like. Like wording wise, because it's from the kid's point of view. So, dialogue and things like that, it's very, that's how it's written. So, in that sense, I didn't like it. But overall, as the story and everything, I liked it.
Well, I think you'll definitely enjoy the movie because there are certain stories that like just do better when they're on screen, and it's like I think easier to experience. I think that's a good example. Like it's easier to experience a story like on a screen that's being told from a child's perspective versus like reading it. I can definitely see how that would be trickier.
I can see that, but at the same time, for me, like the way my brain works, I definitely wanted to read it first because, the whole thing about the room, about the size of it and what's inside and everything, right? I think it was better to read it and get, kind of imagine what it would look like and feel like, and then to watch the movie and see someone else's idea of like, okay, this is what it looks like. Because I don't think I would have felt as like, like confined if I had watched it and then read it. Because if I watch it, I already know what it looks like and I can see how they moved in that space. So then when I watched it, I'd be just imagining what I saw when I read
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought about that. I think for me, especially with that story, it's more of like is it a story that is gonna make me feel sad? Because it's a sad story, a sad book. I would rather just watch it instead of read it. And we've talked about this in our Shadow and Bone conversation when we were talking a little bit about like good versus evil, happy stories versus, you know, like darker stories. I definitely always lean towards reading like the fluffier, happier stories. I am more likely to watch something that's a little bit darker. So like Room is, you know, a sad, dark story. Like I don't want to read that. That just would put me in a very like negative headspace. So I wasn't even thinking about like, oh yeah, like the room and the dimensions and what that experience be like. You know, it's a different experience reading it, obviously, versus watching it. And I think that wasn't even a thought that crossed my mind when I was watching the movie. For me, it was more of like the feelings behind it. But that interesting that you mentioned that, and I wonder if I would have had that kind of experience when I was reading it versus watching it, which I'll never know now. But it is a good movie, and I think you would enjoy it after you watched it. But you know, you'll have both to compare after that.
Yeah.
And it's Brie Larson, who is amazing, and I think she won an Oscar for that role. So it was really good.
It is. It's definitely on my watch. You know what? I have so many things on my to watch and to read. Why do I even have a list anymore? Like, I'll get to it when I get to it.
Some other ones that are like more darker themes, I guess, more adult type books that I would not normally watch or read that I liked. Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale. That was a book I had to read in school. And then later on, I watched the show. But I enjoyed the book in school, and I wouldn't have read that on my own. I just like it was part of like a reading I had to do. But that was a really good book. I love the book, and then the show. And I think this is one of the examples where I think the show surpassed the book because they went on. They're like on season 3 or 4 now. I don't know, but I loved how they expanded the story. So the first season covers like the first book, yeah, because now there's a second one. But it covers the first book really well done, and it's like again, this book in the series is a perfect like way to tie in my classics conversation. It's not really like a classic; it's more of like a more modern book. But I read it in school, so in my mind, I treat it like as one of those required kind of reading situations. And it's an older book. I think it was written like in the 80s, maybe. But the show is obviously done in like modern, like futuristic, like world. So it does definitely show it's like a modern futuristic world from like our point in time. So the book is like I don't know, like the 80s or something, and then the show is like futuristic from like the 21st century, 2040, 2050, something like that. And it's a good update, right? So it takes that original story, but it like also updates it, and it makes it more accessible to like a current day audience. I don't know. I just said a lot of stuff there. But it's good. It's good. I loved it. I watched it. And I think everybody that's read that book, that's watched the show that I know, kind of agrees. Like, it's really good. And it's like one of those, like, almost better than the book situations. And then they went on and they continued the show. I think, again, they're like season 3 or season 4. And they expanded the story. And then Margaret Atwood released a second one like in that same universe, which I haven't read it. I think it's called like The Testaments. And I don't know how well that lines up with the show because it was released after the subsequent seasons were released, right? That was released like in the middle of like season 3 or something. So I don't know. I'm curious to read it and find out how that lines up. She's an amazing author. Margaret Atwood is a Canadian author. Yeah, like amazing. And I've read a few of her stuff. She also has that. So The Handmaid's Tale is on Hulu. She has Alias Grace, I believe that's how you pronounce it, on Netflix. I didn't realize it was hers because I had seen her title, but I haven't read the book. But I saw that show on Netflix later, and oh my gosh, that is also really good. I imagine the book is good, but I haven't read it. But she's just a really good storyteller, and I guess her stories just translate really well into the screen. And that is a really good watch too. Like, I think everybody should watch it. Read Margaret Atwood because she's amazing, and watch her shows because the shows are amazing. That's what I have to say on that. But again, these are like stories and books that, like I was saying, were like more adult, like slightly darker, that I would not pick up on my own / read on my own, but like are really good. And I feel like I need to delve more into that. Like, I need to look into more like adult, like, you know, those mystery crime like stories, because I feel like there's some really good adaptations living in that world that I haven't really explored as much.
There's actually a couple other ones that came to mind while you were talking about that one. Is Downton Abbey based off a book?
Or I don't think so, but if it is, it's my favorite adaptation ever. I think they did a book after, like, a companion.
Or was it the other way around? They had and then it was the show and then the book.
I think it was a show. It might have been turned into like a companion novel or something. I didn't know there was a companion novel.
I don't know. I feel like I've seen Downton Abbey like on a cover of a book. Or I'm just imagining things now.
No, I don't think it's based off of a book, but I love the show.
I don't know. It's like that came to mind. And then the other one, I know you haven't read or watched this. It's The Night Manager. It's a John le Carre. So it's like it's by John le Carre. He's like I guess it's like he's the spy world, you know, like Bond, but not so like movie big productionist kind of thing. It's more very let's say Bond is like the light-hearted version, maybe. I don't know if I'm describing this right. But it's from the dude who wrote Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
No.
Anyway, so that one, yeah, so Night Manager, I've read it, and then I read it just to watch it because Hugh Laurie's in it. And then the book, they did a good job condensing the book, I think. I mean, you know, all adaptations kind of condense it. But I think the show did a really good job condensing it. I liked the show. It was a good cast. And, the title sequence. I love the title sequence. Whoever worked on that title sequence deserves a raise. Like, it's probably my favorite anyway. But I think that one was well done. If it's not like the easiest book to get through, at least because it's not my type of book, but it's a good watch. I liked it.
I think it's hilarious because as we talk about one thing, I keep thinking of like more and more and more. And I'm like,
keep thinking more and more.
I wanted to circle back to your Downton Abbey question. I looked it up, and it's not based off of a book, but it's inspired by a book called To Marry an English Lord. It's inspired by that book, and then like they kind of wove in some like historical details, but it's not like, that's not the basis of it. It's just kind of like inspired story.
So my brain is just imagining things. Good to know.
I'm rewinding back to YA and / middle grade, and I just remembered another horrible failure adaptation. It was called Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. Did you read that?
I read it. I didn't watch it though.
Okay, yeah, that movie came out later, 2008. So I was like already older, and I wasn't really interested in watching the movie. But I like eventually at some point in time I watched it, and I was like, thank goodness I did not. get excited for this because it was so bad. It was like Iraqan, level, Mortal Instruments level bad. It was bad, bad, bad. I was like, no, don't do this. And it's such a great story. I love that series. I forget about it a lot, but I love it. And I was just like shooketh after I saw that movie. Don't watch it.
You know what?
Read it. Don't watch it.
Okay, and then speaking of like really, really bad, I remember having to watch Beowulf for school.
Oh my goodness, Angelina Jolie.
I think that was the first movie I can remember where as soon as it was over, I wanted those hours of my life back.
Didn't we have to watch that for school? Or like it was like were you in my same class? Like
I don't
that
know.
was an assignment?
We were reading it, and then the movie happened to come out at the same time. And then, yeah.
I think it was like an extra credit summer assignment, right?
Yeah, should not have done it.
So, yeah, I think it was either 10th or 11th grade. We were reading Beowulf, might have been 10th. And, we had summer like reading assignments for homework. And I think Beowulf was like an extra credit type thing. Like you can go watch the movie, or maybe it wasn't even the summer. Maybe I'm just making that up. But yeah, I remember. It was 10th grade. It was 10th grade. We were reading Beowulf, and the movie came out. We had read Beowulf. We're like, yeah, let's go watch Beowulf because we read the poem, whatever. That was a movie that I walked out on, and I don't think I've ever done that in my life. Like I was at the theater and I said, I want my money back because I did not enjoy this.
It was so bad.
Oof, that was a good flashback there.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that one. I don't think that might be my most disliked movie.
I know there are ones that I like that people don't like, and it's really funny that I'm thinking about this right now. What were the names? Oh, Vampire Academy is a YA kind of book.
I know the books, but I can vaguely remember they made it into something.
I like vaguely remember reading that first book, and then it got turned into a movie, and I liked the movie. Again, it's not stellar quality content, but like it was good. The book was not as good in my opinion. And then Beautiful Creatures. It was not a faithful adaptation, but I liked the movie, and a lot of people didn't like that. So those were a couple ones that like I'm thinking. And The Great Gatsby we already talked about. Like maybe because I just love Leo, but The Great Gatsby, the movie from like 10 years ago or whatever, like great story and just visually stunning. Like as a movie.
Yes.
And wardrobe and costume, which I know you love, like was good.
Okay, the thing about that one, wardrobe and all of that, visually, all that aside, the acting part of it, Leo is the only thing I liked.
Leo is the only good part of that movie. Well, I think you'd be happy to learn that because apparently Great Gatsby's like go on, what do they call it when a book becomes part of the public domain? So
is it that old, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this year The Great Gatsby becomes a part of the public domain. I think that's what you call it. It's like out in the world for anybody to
it's not copyrighted
use. Yes. So there are a lot of Great Gatsby projects and Great Gatsby inspired projects lined up for this year. So keep an eye out for that because there's a lot of like remakes and adaptations of that coming out soon. I saw that somewhere online. Like there were at least like 10 things or something, and there is
that's excessive.
There. I mean, it's a great story. People love it, and we are in the roaring 20s again.
That's true.
It's a great time to bring up that story.
You know what? Thinking about the classics and stuff. You know what?
I want to wrap up this conversation in which I have mostly talked about the things.
I mean, you are more knowledgeable in this area. I mean, eventually we'll get to something where I have more knowledge.
I don't think I'm more knowledgeable. I just think that I'm more likely to watch something without having read it. And I really do think there's a lot of things that you've watched having not realized they were based on a book.
I'm sure I have, but I would rather not know because then my stack of books to read just gets bigger.
Okay. Well, I would like to wrap this conversation up about. Let me try that again. I would like to wrap this conversation up by talking about some of the things that we would like to see adapted and maybe some adaptations that are coming up that we're looking forward to.
I think you have more knowledge about this stuff because I'm strictly in, like, I'm trying to get through books.
Okay, but if there were, like, books that you wanted to see adapted, like in a perfect universe with perfect everything.
I don't know. I mean, it's not so much as it hasn't been made already. I just like it to be remade and made
Or remakes.
better. Dorian Gray, because that's like my favorite. I want it done right.
Hold on, you just cut off on my end. You cut off on my end. Right. So, remakes that you would like to be seen, remakes that you would like to see, or let me try that again. Book adaptations you would like to see, or remakes of adaptations you want to see.
Definitely Dorian Gray, because it's like my favorite book. I want that to be done well. I mean, at the moment, right now, it's just waiting for season 2 of Shadow and Bone and season 2 of The Witcher.
We didn't even talk about The Witcher.
But I mean, that's like my head. That's like the things I'm looking forward to. It's those two.
We didn't talk about The Witcher, though. Is that a adaptation you like?
That's its own thing. That's like it's not that simple.
Did you watch the show before reading the book?
I have played the games, so the books are a moot point.
But did you watch the show before reading the book?
Yes. So my order is...
That was all I needed to know.
It's the games, then the show, then the book.
But aren't the games based off of the books?
Yes, but I didn't know the games were based off the books when I started playing the games.
Okay.
So this is one of the weird ones where it's like, it's not just show or movie and book. It's game, show, and then book. But, yeah, so there's that. And then, what are some other ones?
So you said Dorian Gray, your Shadow and Bone, which we talked about in our previous episode. Yeah, we both really enjoyed.
That's the most recent thing I watched, so I'm like...
And The Witcher.
I don't know, I have mixed feelings about Rebecca, because I really like the book, and I know this movie is bad. So do I want to just keep liking the book itself, or have it made really well? I'm on the fence.
Mm-hmm.
What else? I don't know, because the things I've read, it's like I don't need them to be a movie or a show.
Yeah.
It's like I'm good with them just being a book, because I've been so disappointed by adaptations. I'm kind of like, let's stop.
I think I agree with that point. I definitely have always been much more of a fan of the book. And Hollywood gave me adaptations that I didn't know I wanted. But then when they gave them to me, a lot of the time I didn't like them, right? Like, I was just like, I wish I would have just stuck to the reading experience. There are a few gems here and there that I'm like, wow, that was good, or it was comparable to the book, or sometimes even better. There's a few. But yeah, for the most part, I would say I get adaptations because Hollywood's like, hey, money. But a lot of the times I'm like, I would have just liked to stick with the book instead. Having said that, though, I would love to see more diverse stories being told. I feel like a lot of stories that we talked about and like is the running theme in life. A lot of these stories are white authors. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of books, and I'm partly to blame. I have not diversified my bookshelf enough. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of authors of color, stories of color that like we have not seen. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, people are like, these stories would not make as much money. They wouldn't have as much of a larger audience. Mm-hmm. And I think that there could be lots of books that are by authors of color that could be made into shows and movies. Mm-hmm. One that I'm really excited to be seeing soon is Americana by, her name is really long and I'm gonna butcher it, but it's by a Nigerian author.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, something like that. It's a book that I read a few summers back, and it's really good. And it's like 600 pages or something like that. It's long, but that's going to be adapted soon, and I heard about that, and I'm super excited. She is also really well known for her. She has a TED Talk where she talks about the danger of a single story, and she has a book like We Should All Be Feminists. She has a lot of stories, but they're not. She's not as. She is very popular now, but I don't know how many people actually like read them. Mm-hmm. As it's like she's gonna get bigger, but she's got some good stories. But anyway, I saw that story's being adapted. I'm excited. It's a story about some Nigerian characters and like them moving back to Nigeria and adapting and stuff. So that's interesting. Mm-hmm. A lot of stories by like Latino and Black authors. Mm-hmm. That are not coming to the top of my head right now, but I know that I have not seen adapted yet. Mm-hmm. But I have read that people are like optioning them and considering adapting them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm thinking about. Obviously, I would love to have like a remake of some of those really bad ones I talked about. Like, I would love Inkheart to have a remake, like a really good remake. And it's a trilogy, so I think that could be like a show. Like, Netflix could pick it up and like make a show out of it. Mm-hmm. It might still be too recent, but I could do with the Harry Potter remake. I would love Harry Potter to be a series. I would love for Harry Potter to be a show like Game of Thrones.
I think that would work.
Yeah, totally I think work. So too, especially with like Netflix's current budget or like Hulu or Amazon. I don't know. One of them could pick it up.
They all have the budget.
I feel like that would be amazing, but I don't know. Given all the J.K. Rowling controversies lately,
we can get into that.
And I don't know how that works, but like, I would love for that to be remade into a show. And Twilight was so bad. I don't know if it's like gonna be any better if it's remade, but it's just the movie was so bad, and I don't like Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart as Bella and Edward.
And we'll I never get into did. Twilight. I've got some opinions.
We keep teasing this, but we're going to talk about it. We have lots of thoughts about Twilight and Harry Potter. But yes, I feel like I would love to see that one remade. That could also be like a series or a show, because there's 5 books. I don't know how many books now. That would be great as a show.
So many adaptations.
So little time. And we didn't even talk about a couple other big ones.
We didn't talk about a lot. There's a lot.
Like, we didn't talk about the Lord of the Rings. We didn't talk about, I don't even know if you read this, but like Outlander.
That's I was thinking about that earlier. I was like, is that a book or is it just a show?
It's a book. It's a crazy book. I think I recommend people watch the show. You don't have to read the book. Just stick to the show. She's an amazing author. She's got a lot to say, and she's very smart, very knowledgeable. But like the books are like too much going on there. So I'm not even gonna get into that today. But yeah, those are some great ones.
Have you read any
just
of
have
the
to
Lord
talk
of the
about.
Rings?
I've read The Fellowship of the Ring, the first one, and that was only because I wanted to say I read it, but I don't. Oh, and I read part of The Hobbit, like half of it. I don't like the books, but I love the movies. It's just not my pace in the books. I feel like that happens a lot with fantasies or like really like complex thick books. Like I will watch it, I will enjoy it, but I don't want to read it. Or I can't read it because it's too much.
Lord of the Rings is just one of those. It's definitely because of the battles and all the visuals of it. It is a good watch. Reading, it's alright. It's not bad. I mean, I can see why there's, it has avid fans, like diehard fans. But you don't have to read it.
Don't worry, I never will finish. Because I have read some. I will never finish. Well, that has been our discussion on book adaptations from page to screen. Until next time, this is Midnight Musings ×2. I'm your host, Soul.
I'm your other host, V.
Good night.